I can't handle it. I'm with you right now, people. International audience. Rock and roll. I'm hip. That's the truth. I'm the hip guy here. Okay, Pete, I'm talking to you out there, buddy.
Oh, America! Are you serious? It is showtime, baby! Here we go! Red Jack Slam! Man, it's awesome!
360 Mindset, sharing skills and drills wrapped by stories from elite performers and your favorite sports pro. So take your first step. Speak your first word with a foundation of positive thought that comes from 360 Mindset and your host, Coach Whiteman. Lowell Whiteman. Let's get started. No excuses and no.
Well, there's no question about that. There are no excuses and there are no regrets when it comes to putting out your best in front of this great audience at KUHSdenver.com. You're listening to me. I'm breathing this morning, getting ready for 360 Mindset Performance Talk. And we're going to talk about pushing the circle, people. Pushing the circle. What does that mean? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that and sharing some insights about pushing the circle and what it takes to get to your best with that tool. So before I get too far into the description of pushing the circle, let me just use the football week 2 of the NFL to share with you what's going on and how those teams might benefit from pushing the circle. And as I think about that, I say to you, do you know why I'm wearing the Chicago Bears shirt? I mean, this is Bronco territory, right? But the Chicago Bears is one of the best examples I'm going to have today for showing you the model of pushing the circle. They've come a long way. They're going to continue to grow and develop, just like most of the pro teams will, and especially our Denver Broncos. But I want to make sure that I use the Chicago Bears as a way to share with you. Now, in addition to starting the show on a great note, excited note, let me review a little bit. Say hi to our international listeners out there and viewers. Peter out there in good old England, taking a look at the audiences out there. Hope you're tuning in tonight for you, and sharing that. Anybody that's out there in our international audience, let's take a look. We've got Indonesia, Canada, Turkey, Serbia, Greece, and of course, Cleveland. Some people might think that's overseas, but it's not. It's Cleveland. Cleveland's a good place. The Browns are doing pretty well, actually. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So college football this weekend, a lot of big things. I know for me, the alma mater, CSU, I've got 2 alma maters. CSU is playing Alabama at Alabama. I'm hoping for a great competitive game there. Both teams are doing great things. Most people would say Alabama always does great things. But I know the realities of college football. There's always days when you think, can we really do this? And Alabama's no exception. They're going to have their days when they think, are we really going to do this? But tomorrow is going to be a great test for both teams in week 3, actually, for some of them. But it's still early in the season. It'll be a great learning experience for both squads. Okay, so the NFL week 2, couple of things I want to point out as we get into our Push the Circle topic today. The first one is noting that Thursday Night Football was the Texans against the Cincinnati Bengals. Somewhat of a surprise to me that the score, number one, was so low on the Cincinnati side of the ball, but that's a testament to J.J. Watts and the defense there. We'll talk about J.J. and his definition of pushing the circle for today, but it was a very interesting game, low-scoring game. What was it, 17-9, I think, was the final for that game. It actually was kind of boring in the fourth quarter. It was pretty much a square-off, toe-to-toe fist fight on both sides of the ball. Another interesting note for week 2 is a couple of things. The NFL is promoting environment and setting and being feeling comfortable in the stadiums you're at. And the Atlanta Falcons opened up in their first game in their new facilities, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the Falcons, and the Chargers, as a franchise, are returning back to Los Angeles to play the Miami Dolphins. That should be a pretty good game. I think, this weekend on Sunday in particular with the NFL is going to be kind of a shootout for a lot of teams. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. The first one I want to talk to you about is the Eagles versus the Chiefs. Both of those quarterbacks, Wentz and Reed, were the top 5 performing quarterbacks of last week's games. So look for that to be quite the shootout. Now, as I say that, you'll watch the game and you'll say, "Man, I listened to the 360 Mindset show on KUHS Denver, and he said it's going to be a shootout. It was boring." Well, both teams have pretty good defenses, and Philadelphia is still trying to figure out how good their defense can be. Kansas City, however, is with Andy Reid. He's a defensive-minded guy. That's going to be a tough game. So if they come out punching each other out and matching their game plan, offensive game plans, it could be just a solid competitive defensive game where the quarterbacks and the offensive squads are trying to find a way to crack the strategies that are being brought out. But remember, Andy Reid has a history with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was there for 14 seasons? Oh my goodness, 14 seasons. I'm not going to skip over anybody. There's a lot of 1-0 teams going against each other. For example, Buffalo is going to go against the Carolina Panthers at Carolina. They're probably still not sure at Carolina, will the real Cam Newton please step forward coming off that injury. But that should still be a good game. It's a competitive game in the conference, if you will, with Buffalo versus Carolina. Then the game that everybody around this area is going to watch is Denver playing Dallas. And Prescott, they had a win against the Giants, 19-3. Again, a surprise because it was low scoring. But usually with those two teams, they get after each other pretty strong defensively. But Prescott still threw for 268 yards. Simeon, on the other hand, with the Denver Broncos, he had an okay game. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement from the standpoint of what does he see, how does he react to the defense? Is he feeling more and more comfortable back there in the pocket and actually finding the place to step up in the pocket? It's a vision thing. We're going to talk a little bit about when we talk about pushing the circle, about the importance of environment, your awareness of your environment, and what do you see when you're in that environment to make sure that you're picking out your reads, both pre and post reads, as quickly and as accurately as you can. But it's a win, man. 24-21. The Broncos beat San Diego last week. Sorry, it's going to be hard for me to get over this. Los Angeles Chargers. I think I may have said San Diego a couple times already. But that game should be with Dallas against the Broncos at Denver is going to be a pretty good game. And it's just a lot of dynamics this season. That's again a 1-0. Both teams are 1-0, 1-0. Then the next one, which I'm going to say this, not a guarantee, but I'm very certain that the Green Bay Atlanta game, both teams are 1-0. I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers. It's a no-brainer to say he's going to pass the ball. He passed last week for 311 yards with 1 touchdown, and it's just a good productive game for a kind of a surprise. Jordy Nelson. I mean, he's a good target, but Jordy had 7 catches that averaged over 10 yards a catch. He had almost 80 yards with 1 TD in that game. And it's just well, Aaron Rodgers is going to find his receivers if they're open. He's going to create things that's going to put them constantly in the place to win the contest. Now, Matt Ryan, again, a seasoned competitor, Super Bowl. I mean, he knows how to handle the pressure. He also is a lot like Aaron Rodgers, and he creates things. Both men, you do what the coaches say is create something with your legs, make it happen, extend the play. All of those are great things to remember as a quarterback and trying to keep your team competitive, one down at a time. But Matt, I mean, he's 392 yards. So here's 2 guys that are used to throwing 300-yard games routinely. And what's interesting, though, with Matt, 5 balls went in the end zone. So 5 touchdowns, and they caught him, okay? 5 touchdowns for that game. 4 of them were passing, 1 was rushing. So know that Matt's going to definitely do something with his legs to create stuff. I watch Aaron Rodgers sometimes, and I get sore. I ache for him. Maybe it's because of my age. He's not as old as I am, but I just know. So it's credit. It's a credit. It's a backhanded comment to Aaron Rodgers. It's a credit to him that he's still as mobile as he is and working as hard for his team to be in contention. Now, the last game of the weekend for the NFL that I want to point out, well, the weekend, but then I'm going to point out another one for next week because I'm wearing the shirt, Chicago Bears, is Detroit against New York, at New York. New York had a tough loss there, so it's a 1-0 Detroit team against an 0-1 New York Giants team. For me, the season, for our theme today with Push the Circle, the season today in getting players to push the circle and build that camaraderie and that teamwork, it's essential in the weeks 1 through 3. So New York is 0-1 right now, and this is a key game for them, and it's especially key because it's at home. So they're going to be in a familiar place, give them a chance to really amp it up, get aroused, and bring it on Sunday. And I'm hoping that one of the guys that I have some knowledge about is Weston Richburg, their center. I believe he's such an all-pro guy in his behavior and in his effort. Gets the recognition for that as the season goes on. But more importantly, his colleagues on the line, bringing that offensive line together and really having them execute in a way that represents who they truly are, so that the Giants can come through with a good three-pronged approach to winning the game. That all 3, defense, offense, special teams, are all kicking it pretty hard, and it may start. Maybe the catalyst is going to be the offensive line. Maybe they're the ones that are going to act and talk in a way that's going to give their teammates a feeling that we're going to make this happen our way and control the Detroit Lions. Because Matt Stafford, again, he's not as consistent as some of his counterparts like Aaron Rodgers or the Atlanta Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan in using his feet to get things done. He has a tendency to do that, but usually it's out of desperation, and the results aren't always exactly what he wants. But they beat Arizona last week with a good. It was 35-23. It was quite the effort offensively, but it was a rally effort. They stepped up towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter to overcome a deficit to win that game. Matt threw for 292 yards and 4 touchdowns. So again, here's an accurate quarterback. The kid has it going on. He sees the whole field. Eli Manning it looks to me like he's still trying to find his stride, and yet he's still one of the most prolific quarterbacks in his career compared to a lot of quarterbacks in the league, and one of which is his brother. So I'm waiting for him to come out of his shell a little bit this season and get it started. And the second and third week is the place to do it. Get your foundation settled underneath you. So as I say that, and we're coming in close to finishing the first segment of Mindset, is our first segment here at KUHS Denver on the 360 Mindset Performance Talk Show. We're going to do a little review of the college football scene out there. As I said, we've got Colorado State at Alabama. Other games are, we're not everybody's into conference yet, and that's definitely true with Colorado State. But these games they're playing are a way for them to set the foundation and get amped, get ready to go, understand their limits, get through the injuries, or maybe it's not injuries as much as just bumps and bruises, because when you play competitive teams like Alabama, you're going to get your fair share of bumps and bruises. So I'm looking forward to a very competitive game with Colorado State and Alabama. Another game of note for me that I'm very interested in watching is Air Force Michigan. Air Force is one of those, and Michigan's 2-0, so they've come away with some pretty tough games, but won them. Air Force is 1-0 to start the season. Now they're obviously, by the people that put the spreads out there, their Air Force is not the premier play for betting in Vegas. Michigan, by the numbers, is. But I tell you what, Air Force is always that what are they? How are they going to come out? Because they're always going to play hard. They're trenchers, regardless of their ability. They're gonna have discipline, and that's not to say Michigan doesn't. But I think in the first half is where the tape's going to be told with regard to Air Force Michigan, putting Air Force in a place they might be a contender in the second half if they stay close. So Michigan shouldn't take them for granted. Another game that's going to be very interesting to me this weekend is going to be the Washington UW versus Fresno State. Now that's a late game. I'm rolling it through my data here to see what time. I think it's at 8 o'clock. It might be an 8 o'clock game tonight, and it's a test of Washington's defensive line. Last week Washington UW did a lot of substituting, keeping them fresh because of the way the offense was running. They were a quick to the ball offense they were playing against. So University of Washington moved things in and out. Now Fresno State's going to be a little bit more methodical. Maybe that's because they're called the Bulldogs. I'm making a connection. I may never be there, but a bulldog kind of hunkered in, get it done, work it hard, work it strong. So I think in the first half, Washington UW is going to have their challenges, and the defensive line and defensive unit is going to be challenged to get their attitude on and punch in the mouth first. A lot of defensive coaches says you punch first and see how they punch you back. And if they don't punch you back very hard, punch them again. That may sound a little bit harsh, but that's the game. It's a violent game, and if you want to establish your position, you have to do that. And I think the Huskies are going to have to make sure they establish their position defensively to punch Fresno's offensive line and show them who's going to dominate the game. Outside of that, it's not a passe weekend for football, but I think you should look at teams to watch that are going to be competitive. The Texas Tech Arizona State game is going to be one to watch. I think your Kansas State Vanderbilt game is something to take a look at to see good competitive football. Another one that I think could be a surprise to people is the Oregon-Wyoming game at Wyoming. That's a tough stadium to play in because the 12th man is definitely the fans there. It's a good crowds always show up at the Wyoming games. Another one that I'm hoping for a good friend and colleague of mine to hopefully the Oregon State football team comes through and steps up this weekend and plays hard at Washington State. That's across the state. It's on the eastern side of Washington. Going over to Washington State, it's at home for Washington State. So the Beavers are going to come over there and play the Cougars, and hopefully it's going to be for sure a competitive game. I'd like to see that happen. A lot of question marks about the Army-Ohio State game as far as is it going to be a blowout, or is Army going to – Army always works hard, but do they have the talent to really make it a game and maybe even challenge for a win? Another one that's interesting to me, I think Florida, the Gators are going to take it, but watch the Tennessee-Florida game because it's at Florida, and it's after the hurricane coming through. So they're going to be playing there. There's going to be a lot of emotion, a lot of energy there for that game. So that's it for my review of college and professional football as a precursor to our theme today, which is push the circle. So as I end the mindset segment and go into the skills segment, we're going to define pushing the circle. And this is it. Imagine yourself on a circle, that everything you do when you go to work, you're on a circle. and you have a position on that circle. There are expectations of you performing and moving around that circle to deliver results. The results could be you're creating financial statements, or the results could be that you're a salesperson and you're going to sell products, sell a service, make so many calls for the day to get so many closes and sales for the day. Well, pushing the circle is you looking at your environment and those in the environment with you, teammates, let's say, colleagues, office mates, whatever word you use to describe those who you work with and around. And I say with and around because your environment is not just what's directly in front of you, but what surrounds you, what influences you. So when I ask you to push the circle, it means to look ahead of yourself and what's in front of you, in particular the people in front of you. And if you really see them, if you really know who they are, and you want them to be, and you want to be the best you can be, look to push them first. Look to push who they are and what they can do first. And by you doing that, extending yourself out in front of you towards those people that are in your world, you're going to get that energy back to you in exponentially. It's going to be greater and stronger and more rewarding. And that takes a certain amount of trust. So the performance, pushing the circle in a performance way, you've got to be humble, because you're not thinking about yourself first. You're thinking about somebody else first. And so that's a humility thing, being humble. But then there's the trust piece, that what you do, you trust that it's going to be pushed back to you. And most people, when they hear about the push the circle strategy I offer, they go, yeah, it's kind of reluctant, because they're thinking, am I really going to get it back? And how fast? You know, I need it now. I'm in a bad place. I'm not feeling good about myself. And I want instant results, instant gratification. Well, it may not happen instantly. Sometimes it might. But I think it's a question of what is your intent first, and that requires courage. The courage to understand what you want out of the world that you're in, so that you're aroused and motivated with your skill set to push forward with others. So an example of pushing the circle would be, let's say you're a middle manager, and you've got people that work for you, and initially your expectation is they should know their job. They got orientation when they were hired. They went through training process when they were hired to learn about their job and the way we do it here. That should be enough. Well, it might not be, because you have a set of expectations for those people or that person. It's managing to your expectations that push the circle takes a first push at. You look at your expectations, and that's the first motivation for you to push somebody in front of you, that you're managing your own expectations. You're checking with them for understanding. Do you understand what my expectations are for you? Do you understand the skills and resources that you have available to you to be able to do what you need to do to meet my expectations? So pushing the circle requires that trust, requires that humility, and also that overlying all of that, a courage to engage with people. And I know that there are varying degrees of comfort in engaging face-to-face with people, which is, gosh, people, that's why these techno pieces we have are so much easier to work with, because I don't have to face-to-face anybody. Even when I do a FaceTime through my phone, it's, for some people, it's much more comfortable to do that than to actually have the person in the room physically right there in front of them. So we've somewhat created our own problem of being able to utilize a tool like push the circle when we become too anchored in the technology to allow us not to have human contact. So I'm going to encourage you to not just put the phone down, but think about purposefully, how would I use the phone to push my circle and to move towards people in a way that's going to help them be better, but better in a way that meets my expectations. So the next piece I want to say to you about the definition of pushing the circle, before we take our brief break and then go into our next segment of skills, is to say to you that, yeah, you have expectations for others, and that's pushing the circle, but not in a way that it's selfish. I tell my athletes and my executives I work with that you need to have a swagger about yourself that's first focused on you and what you're all about. So I give them the mantra and ask them to fill in the blank when I say to them this mantra. It's all about, and then they say me, or I would repeat it back to them, it's you. It's all about you, but in a self-aware way, so that when we take the push the circle model with this understanding, I got swagger, I've got confidence, that builds your courage, but you still need to be humble. You still need to be generous enough, kind enough to listen to people, not just push your agenda, not just, ram your expectations down people's throats, but to actually think about who's in front of me and how can I help them be better at understanding not only themselves, but what my expectations are for them and how we can then continue to work together. And that's where that trust gets larger and richer and fuller. All right, so that completes the mindset. That's our mindset for today, pushing the circle. And I set it up with the NFL and college team agenda for this week. And we're going to talk more about those teams a little bit later as we go through the sessions today. But you're listening right now and watching KUHSdenver.com. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman of 360 Mindset Performance Talk. Every week, I hope you're checking out Facebook, 360 Mindset on Facebook, looking for the extra point segments that are a brief interlude to give you a heads up on what Friday's show is going to be all about. But right now, we're going to take a little bit of break, and we're going to talk about a tool that will help you understand more precisely what you need to do to push the circle for you. That's assuming. Okay. Okay, there's our song for today. Breathe. I love Breathe. So we're talking about RMP16. We've talked about it before, but the RMP16 as it relates to pushing the circle gives you a chance to breathe and look at numbers that relate to behaviors that are unique to you. There are 16 of them, 16 foundational desires that motivate us to perform at our best. And with that RMP16 data, a leader, a coach can have information that's going to be more precise on how do I and who do I bring in to collaborate with one another. Because now I know a little bit more about who this person is in being able to, as a coach, substitute more effectively with the right people for the right situation on the field. If it's a team within an organization, a corporation, a business, or any types of teams, you'll be able to understand who on the team works the best together, because I've got this data that shows me the good fit. There's a phrase that's out there in both the psychology world as well as out on the streets that says, opposites attract. Well, psychologically and functionally from a standpoint of motivational desires, opposites don't attract. It's like-minded attract and become more motivated, more aroused. So if you're a business team and you're working on a project and it has like tight deadlines, it's very competitive, there's lots of work that has to be done, I think you're going to want to have people that are like-minded in their level of desire to get the job done that are the same to you. And that's what the RMP can help people do. So if you're a human resource person or you're a decision maker in your business and you're listening to us today, take a look at 360mindset.com, look at the RMP16 tab, and start examining what on my website will tell you about how that data from the RMP16 on 16 human desires will help you create teams that are not only more collaborative, but understand who are the best fits to get the job done when we need those jobs done. All right, so today is Friday, as usual, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We meet together here at KUHSdenver.com, and I talk to you. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't. Today, like Bill Maher would say, I can do whatever I want because it's my show. If I want 2 guests, I'll have 2 guests. If I want 1 guest, I'll have 1 guest. Today, I'm going to have no guests. It's just me talking about pushing the circle. So we're in our second segment called Skills, and it asks the question in today's situation as to what skills do I call upon from myself or from my resource pool of tools to use to help me be better at pushing the circle. Maybe confrontation. Things come up, they get a little bit confrontational sometimes, and maybe you're not a person who handles conflict or confrontation very well. So maybe there's things you need to get some skills with that. Or maybe you are really good at that and you need to be softer. So here's some things I want to share with you, regardless of where you might sit on that particular example as to what your skills are. Here are some things to think about. Real simple. There's 5 of them. 5 senses. They are your 5 senses. That's the first place I want you to look for the skill set to help you enrich using push the circle tool. So pushing the circle needs to be used in a way that you can see your environment. So there's the visual thing. You want to see that. In addition to that, you also want to take a look at the environment in its entirety. What do I hear? There's another sense. We've got the what do I see? Then there's the flavor, the sense of taste. And I'm not asking you to go lick the walls or anything. I'm not talking about the environment getting that close to it. But I'm talking about sometimes the smell, which is another one of the senses, becomes a palpable feeling in your mouth about what's out there. I know that for me, when I walk in off the airplane from another place other than Colorado and walk into the gangway in Colorado, I can not only smell, but I can sense a sense of taste and flavor to the air and the environment. It makes me feel so good. So I think if you've been trying to be in touch with this, the skill sets of your 5 senses, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to taste. So the last one is feeling. When I touch something, well, it's not just touching with your hands. I tell my athletes, in particular my football and basketball players, well, baseball too, but less them than I do the basketball and football players, because obviously with football, they're both their feet, their body, their hands, maybe even their face are on the field and in the field. Basketball, a little similar. You know, you're diving for a ball, you get skin knee. I mean, you really feel the surface. So I ask the players to get in touch with that. When they're walking, are they feeling how their feet feel from a standpoint of practical reality? Like when they're walking, feeling how they would cut and move. If there's any soft spots in the floor on the basketball court. With football players, the same thing about the turf being a little bit irregular. So get in touch with those 5 skills so that you are more acutely aware through that use of those 5 senses, your environment. Because when you go into a room, a conference room, you go into a position meeting room for your sport to talk to coaches, or an office of a colleague or a coach, that's an environment. You may have been in it before, but now I'm asking you to be aware of that so that you create the space for yourself that is comfortable for you. I mean, I've got, just this last week, I talked to a client of mine about, what's around your desk? Why is it there? Is it just because somebody gave it to you and you stuck it on a shelf, or does it mean something to you? And is it within a visual or physical proximity to you that it's going to be beneficial, that you're going to feel good about it? Because in those days when they're not going the way you want them to, you want to be in that sphere of influence in your environment so that you are prepared to push the circle initially for yourself. If you can't push your own circle to move yourself around, it's going to be hard for you to do that for anybody else. So you've got to be settled in your environment and comfortable in your environment. Surround yourself with items, images, pictures, maybe even sounds and smells. I know the candle business is a huge business. Well, why do you buy a candle? Because of the smell. Well, what kind of smell do you buy? Do you buy just any old smell you want? No, you buy a smell that makes you feel good and it's good for your senses. Well, the same thing is true with you're going to a competitive event. Do you wash your clothes, or do you just carry around a stinky bag? And that's an oversimplified, tongue-in-cheek kind of example. But I think you look at what you're doing to prepare yourself. Is it complete? Or are you just looking at slices of how to get yourself ready from the standpoint of what was on the field when you practiced the X's and O's? Well, I'm telling you right now, the highest performers in any field of endeavor, be it sport or non-sport, look at their entire environment around them so that they can not only push their own circle, they can then help push a teammate's circle. The humility of who they are becomes much more apparent and satisfying for themselves. So I want you to look at and review, when you focus on the 5 senses as the skills to help you push the circle, start with the visual. Get your environment in front of you. And then look at the tactile, touch side of things, touch and feel side of things. Then go to the listening. So those first three, the vision, the hearing, the touch are big. Then the last, not the last one, but the next one is smell. Now I put smell down the list, even though it's the first, which means it's the oldest sensory piece that's been developed. It's the first one developed in the body, is the olfactory senses. So you have, and the olfactory senses are so sensitive. You ever had those feelings when you're walking down the street and you smell something that reminds you of a time in your life? That's an example of how developed the olfactory systems are to your mind. So I put it as a fourth awareness. So go visual first, feel it, hear it, then you go to the smelling it part, and the last one is taste. And the taste one, here's an example of taste raising up your sensitivity so you can be aware of pushing the circle. There are certain players I work with, actually, and certain executives, they have to have a certain beverage at a certain time of the day, or they don't. Their day just seems to be off. With ball players, it's a certain drink at a certain time prior to the competitive contest. Now, all of this put together is making you whole to be able to push yourself around the circle. And if you're ready to push yourself, you're able to push others humbly, with courage, and with a high degree of trust. All right, we're about a little past half past the hour on the 15th of September. What a great month September is. It's a great month. A lot of great people were born in September. You know, a few of us, like next week. I was born next week. Yeah, it's my birthday next week. September, it's a great month. So we're taking a little bit of break, and I set it up by complimenting myself and how great I am, as selfishly as it sounds, to remind you to go to my website. You want to talk to me privately about you and what you need to do to help you have the skills and the mindset to push your circle, then sign up for a consultation. Challenge me. Bring me to a place by signing up that I can help you find the ways for you to push your own circle to excellence so that you're prepared to help others that are in your world to do the same thing. And then it comes back to you exponentially. Push the circle. RMP 16, you can find it on 360mindset.com. Or you can, send me out a tweet at Coach LKW. That's at Coach LKW on Twitter. And to reach out for me, let's have a chat. Let me help you help yourself push your circle first so that you can help others push theirs. So our third segment on every show is mental conditioning. I want to make sure that we also remember that it doesn't matter where you are in this world, be it here in the United States, here in Colorado, or someplace out there with our viewers overseas and internationally. We've got a few changes. We've got some people from Turkey here. Chattanooga, I love that Chattanooga choo-choo down there in the United States. Then we have some people from Turkey, some more people from Turkey actually. And New Delhi, India popped up on our listener board. So good day to all of you. I say good day because I can't remember the time zones. I don't know if it's good night there for you or good morning, but so good day. Glad you're with us. 360 Mindset Performance Talk on KUHSdenver.com. All right, so the next segment is mental conditioning. And I'm going to go back to our football report this morning on the NFL, what's coming up this weekend, and college games this weekend. And I want to bring up the CSU Alabama game. Now, mental conditioning is the area where you have tools that you use to help you stay in a mindset so your skills can get released in a way that represents the best of who you are. So mental conditioning can be utilized, techniques can be utilized by your competitors. And Colorado State versus Alabama this weekend, Colorado State, now there are some players that were on the team when we went down the first time to Alabama, and I don't think they've changed their stadium much. It's still a great, great place. Extremely clean. I'm so amazed at the quality of the facilities and how clean they are. I mean, it's tough to keep a stadium clean. You got cleats, you got these big ball players, you got people drinking stuff, eating stuff. It's hard to keep a place like that clean. And then the locker rooms, I don't even want to talk about the locker rooms because they're just awesome compared to any other stadium I've gone to, and I've been to a few. The visitors' locker room is one of the first places where mental conditioning can be utilized by your competitor to change your your mindset. And so Colorado State, let me just remind you, especially Nick, let me remind you, if you're listening, you know there are 4 jumbotrons, one at each corner of that stadium. And you also know, Nick, that when you come out to do the on-air patterns to your receivers, actually before you even get into full pass, even when you're out there in your shorts and t-shirt, going through some drills a little bit, the stands are like it's a full game. They're not full yet, but it sounds like it because the fans that are there are just loud, and they use their tool of mental conditioning, the big jumbotrons, those tools with the images they put up there to humiliate you, to reduce your humble place, and to put you in a place where you're going to have difficulty thinking about what you need to do to not only push your own circle, but to push your teammates' circle, to keep them in a place of positivity. But at the same time I say that, when you look at the magnificence of that, you kind of go, whoa, that's awesome. This is really cool. But then you have to forget that and just wrap your brain around it. You now take your mental conditioning tools and you say, I'm going to make the noise in this stadium my own. I'm going to look at those jumbotrons and imagine, though, it's my picture up there. And I'm the one they're exalting, that they're complimenting and showing my statistics. And it becomes more about you then. Like I said, your swagger is about you. And it's in that place. You're taking in the environment and making it your own, so that what your competitor thought would be a tool of mentally conditioning you away from your positive attributes, you're using it for yourself. You're saying, this is mine, and I'm going to make it for me. So Colorado State, the players that know me, the coaches, good luck to you. Have a great game and make it your own. Wrap your arms around it and just envelop it and put it into your push the circle mindset, so that when you're high-fiving your teammates, you're looking in their eyes and using that particular behavior as a mental conditioning skill to get them focused on themselves, and that they see that you're helping them and they turn it back and they're helping you. Now you become galvanized in your intent, and the response you might have with the execution of specific movements and plays, and the execution of those movements within those plays becomes more precise and more releasing who you are, and might surprise Alabama. So make it your own and share it with the youngins that are there. It's a travel squad, so help those young guys that are seeing it for the first time really get excited about it. I'm hoping that that Izzy has a great game with the running game, and that Zach and Jake and Trev and all the offensive linemen really feel good about themselves and take the challenge and know that you're no less than anybody else on that field, and just make it your own. So that's the first part of the mental conditioning thing. But in line with mental conditioning, I've given you a tool to release and practice the mental conditioning, and that's push the circle using your skills to enlighten your mental condition. So you've got your vision, your hearing, your sight, and your feeling. Remember, taste is going to be a little less there, but you know how good that cold water feels when you need to be refreshed. So there's a place where the taste side can really keep it all put together as well, or that Gatorade or Powerade or whatever aid you have that you're drinking in the locker room. Use it with a purposeful intent to help you push your own circle around the success of your abilities, and keep focus on it. The other thing that you can do with the mental conditioning, similar to what you see in the NFL players, receivers are what I'm going to focus on, because I think this weekend is going to be a big offensive effort by every team out there. You've got 5 quarterbacks going against each other that had really great weeks last week where they didn't go against each other. One of those I mentioned to you was Carson Wentz versus Alex Smith. Both quarterbacks did really, really great. Smith had just a phenomenal passing rate, or a quarterback rating of 148.6. He did phenomenal. He threw for 4 touchdowns, 350 yards. He had an 80% passing ratio. That's just sick in a good way. So that's an example of, keeping yourself anchored in what got you there. What did I feel like? What did I see? What did I here so that I can rely on those things to continue to push my circle around, keep that attitude high and focused on what it brings to me, and then use that to engage the receivers, because receivers then in pregame warm-up, if they are understanding how you're pushing them, they're going to say, oh yeah, I better loosen up my hands. You know, you'll see guys, I don't know, a lot of times the cameras don't shoot it for the public broadcast, but you see receivers doing lunges on the sideline. They're doing specific things to raise their awareness of their body. And they may not be thinking of it in these terms. It might be something they do because they want to avoid a hamstring pull. But the essence of that, the simplicity of that, is the mind-body connection. And when I ask you to look at the 5 senses as the skill set to help you release your push the circle attitude, you'll get better at it if you look at it in more detailed terms. And I'm using push the circle as an example for you to practice doing that. So another piece of the mental conditioning part then is going through those routines, staying in those routines, looking at and listening to what the quarterback is saying. You can ask questions. Did I understand what you meant by that? What are we dealing? You know, I know who the defender is. What are you looking for when I run my route? Is there something I should be aware of? When we're doing the back shoulder thing, make sure you watch me. I'm going to push in. When you see me push in, if you can see me push in and I back off, that's, you know, release it just before that. I mean, those kinds of things I know happen, but typically if we get into too much of a routine, we don't remember some of the details. And the push the circle image that I want to share with you and hopefully keep with you is a way for you to remember to not forget the fundamentals. And you create your own fundamentals many times. So on the mental conditioning thing, go through those routines, practice those things. My athletes, I tell them every morning, you wake up with the first thought being take that big clean breath, and it's positive every morning, because it's hard to stay positive if you don't start positive. So don't pass it off. Stay firm with your routine so that you can, with those 5 senses, your skills, those basic skills, which you can control, you stay humble enough to be able to have courage to trust others to push their circle. All right, so that's our mental conditioning segment. We're now at a place before we get into the performance results. We're on the downhill side. We're coasting. We're just floating down the hill a little bit. I want to share with you again another tool actually for the mental conditioning side of things, whether you use it for pushing the circle and helping yourself and others, or you use it for visualization techniques, staying focused. It's called Time to Focus. It's the app that I designed. It's on iTunes. Time to Focus. I keep being remiss in getting some testimonials, and a lot of my guys tell me about it. In fact, I've had guys I've worked with 3 or 4 years. They come back and tell me about it, and I just don't. For some reason, I don't think about sharing it. That's part of who I am. I guess I got to market better. But nonetheless, the Time to Focus app is one to get your brain started, regardless of what you're going to do. So in this case, with today's show on pushing the circle, it's getting you aware of what are the things you need to do to get your brain popping. Time to Focus is one of them. Go to iTunes, sign up for it, download it. It's free. Do I need to say that again? It's free. Time to Focus. It's a great game. It looks like a game, but from a psychological, theoretical point of view, it rocks because it gets you to do things to activate your brain in a way that's focusing on you being able to help people push the circle. You've got to be aware. You've got to be sharp. So when you take in the environment, especially if the environment's full of different stimuluses, you want to become aware of those things in your world that are going to be beneficial to you and move everything else out to the side. Time to Focus is a way to help you do that, to get your brain ready to stay on task and to stay charged. Now, as I say that, I've got to go to the college ranks again and point out a game that, oh yeah, here it is. Here it is. It's Baylor versus Duke. Now, Duke is 2-0. Baylor's 0-2, but Baylor has got some talent on their team. Now they've had some unrest and some ups and downs with their program related to coaching and players and this, that, and the other thing. But that's a quality program there. And I think Duke is talented as well. They've been a very talented team for the last few years with their program, their coaches, their administration. It's all a good fit. There are a lot of people pushing the circles and helping each other work out. But at the same time, I think Duke needs to be aware of the process and not the end results. Too often when we're playing a game like football, the end result that's most important is the score on the scoreboard. And, that's a way to understand how you did. But the real scoreboard you want to pay attention to is inside you. Did I take that breath at the right time? Did I make sure that I put all my uniform equipment on in a way that makes me feel good and ready? Those little processes. So there's the get ready process. There's the drills process for executing your physical talent. Then there's the X and O's process when you go through the on-air routine, O against D, and you do the routes and the on-air routes against one another. So you build up until you're ready for the game. And then is it in my head? Do I understand the process? So I'm visualizing the performance results that I predict, that I prescribe for myself. Well, it takes for sure all five senses to put what I just said into perspective, that you actually can envision the results, but the process results, not the end of the score, not the trophy, not the ribbon. That's going to come if you work your process. So I'm talking about, did I get the punch that I needed at the target on that offensive lineman that's going to knock them off their frame so I can get to the gap and cause a runner to either adjust or help me make the tackle? That's a process. That's a goal. Hitting the target, moving the feet, one piece at a time that adds up to potentially the team result, the prize, not the necessary performance result. So there's performance results, as I've said over and over and over again, is a process kind of mindset that we want to think about the steps I take. Now, as I say that, I caution myself. I talk to myself all the time inside my head. In my inside here, I said, self, okay, it's a process, but if you're thinking about it on game day, that's too late. You can't be thinking about it on game day. The thinking about it is before you get on the playing field to compete, even to the point where it's minutes before the game starts. And in football, it's that on-air moment. It's that drills of defensive line against defensive line to work on technique. You can still think about it then because you've been practicing it for so long. The thinking within those drills is just to make you aware so that you can respond. That's the same thing that we recommend with time to focus as a game. It's a way to get it all activated and charged. The extreme to that, if you are in a mindset to want to push the circle for someone, but you're listening to music in a way that it kind of numbs you, that you just kind of like zone out and you're bobbing around, but the music has no purpose. It's not music that gets you rhythmically in charge and ready to go. It's just music because you thought I'm supposed to wear headphones and play music. No, there's a purpose to the music. I try to work on understanding my athletes and executives in a way that I recommend music that fits who they are. We use the RMP16 to help us do that, get that data so that we can understand graphically what's the rhythm. I talked to some athletes this week up in Washington about rhythm, and one likes jazz, another one likes easy listening, not classical, not jazz, but I asked if it was elevator music, and no, it's not elevator. It's more like a classic rock and roll, easy listening, top 40s kind of thing. And with almost every athlete, I ask them very strongly to think about music without lyrics. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a component of being ready to push the circle. When you feel comfortable about yourself, you're going to be more adept and prone to having the trust to be humble enough with the courage that allows you to go forward and push other people because you believe that exponentially with your effort, you're going to get it paid back to you. That's what's really important. that you get a payback, and you have the trust that that's going to come to you. But again, if you don't work it for yourself first, it's going to be hard for you to have that humility, courage, and trust to do it for others. So practice it for yourself. Practice pushing your own circle around your environment with the sensitivity and understanding that your five senses can bring you about that environment and allow you to really just kick some ass, just have some fun with this. As you may know, those who listen to me, we've had Curtis Granderson on here. We've had Curtis do some 90-second ins. That's our little take on certain subjects. But every one of the things he talks about when we get him on the air is about fun. Josh Copeland, in his wrestling career, in the fight ring, in the cage, he's always having fun. Always having fun. The same thing is true with professional football players that I work with. Or just recently, talking to a college swimmer, one of my clients. It's all about fun. And many times, life creates obstacles to you having fun. Pushing the circle is a tool to help you settle yourself in to a system that allows you to divide it up and move things away from you so that you can stay having fun. And fun is not a bad thing, especially when the fun that you have is about doing your best. I'm not talking about having fun and having mediocre results, because for me, fun is excellence. Fun is striving for processes to help me push my circle and then be able to feel comfortable about pushing everybody else's circle along with me. We're coming to a close. We're getting close to the end of the show, and I want to make sure I spend enough time acknowledging a few people around the country. The first one I want to acknowledge is a person who went through Hurricane Irma down in Florida, a person who's very close and dear to my heart. It's my daughter. She's down in Tampa, St. Pete area, and I can't tell you how proud I am of her as a person and as my daughter. If you have people in your life that you always want the best for them, and you want examples of how that's happening and how that's working. My daughter was so good at her plan and putting things together and taking control of what she did and doing it for the right reasons and justifying why she stayed in Tampa during the hurricane. It was just so great to hear what she said and how she came through it. And I'm sure there's others out there that did the same thing, and they should have the same kudos. And I hope if you're listening, you have family members that you say that to them and say how proud you are of them making a mature adult decision and following it through and doing what you needed to do for yourself. The second person I need to say thank you to is, again, my family member, my wife, for being so diligent and in some cases tough. I'm not the easiest person to be around. I'm a competitor, and when I get pushed back, I compete, and I don't always listen as much as I'd like to. So one of the cautions I want to give you about pushing the circle is when somebody's pushing your circle, have your eyes open and your ears available to listen to their intent and their purpose. Because in most cases, it's probably the best for you. And you need to listen to it so that you don't get amped up like I do sometimes and push back harder than what they're trying to push you forward. That's a good thing to remember from me to you, because I've experienced it. And I want to say thank you to her for being there for me for 38 years and helping me with that. And then I'm going to ask you to think about last week's show with Donnell Alexander and my guy Mike Arakpo. Mike and Donnell did some great stuff down in Houston. The Houston citizenry in town, the Texans, the states, the country that came to benefit them, or not benefit, but help them so they could benefit, gave them a real chance to breathe. Man, our country's awesome. It's awesome. And then we get to watch football on the weekends. How's that, huh? It all seems to kind of go away, but we have distractions of entertainment so wonderful, like college and professional football or professional baseball. I'm excited for the end of the month when the Dodgers come into town to play the Rockies for their last 3-game series of the season. Hopefully the Rockies will find their way to the playoffs and continue to challenge others as they push their circle in their dugout and breathe through that in a way that helps them be excellent and, as the song says, count on me. So this is KUHSdenver.com. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman of 360 Performance Sports Talk. We try to give you the best of strategies and insights and stories that will help you be your best. It's always great to be here on a Friday. Thanks, Henry, for your support. We'll let it play out on Breathe, and you have a great day today.
Flow you back to me.